Developing Tomorrow's Leaders is a podcast that is all about educating, supporting, and inspiring the next generation of leaders. Your host, Antoine Thompson, or Coach T, has over 35 years of experience of empowering, inspiring, and enhancing the lives of many young men and women. In this episode, Coach T talks with Giovanna Elias, a personal development, relationships, and communication coach. Here is your host, Coach T.
Please help me welcome Giovanna to Developing Tomorrow's Leaders with yours truly, Coach T. How are you today, Giovanna?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Antoine, for having me here with you today. I appreciate it.
It is our pleasure to have you. Now, I've read in your bio, and everybody will get to find out that you've been traveling the world and getting, and meeting people and learning about people in the process. Can you share with us some of the places that you've been?
Yeah, so I currently actually live in Mexico. I'm originally from Canada, but I'm living right now in Mexico. I've lived before in Italy, in Brazil. I've been around the Middle East, South America, Europe, North America. Africa too. Just need to see Asia. That's missing.
It's on your to-do list, right? Your bucket list.
It certainly is. I think India might be next.
Really?
Yeah, I
Really?
think so.
So what's prompted you to do all this traveling? Just out of
Oh,
curiosity.
love for people, love for cultures, traditions, humanity, understanding this planet that we live on, and just a huge curiosity and hunger to just understand this big place we call Earth a little bit more.
I like that because I feel like that's a really big thing that we've lost touch with, the human connection, if you
Oh,
will.
yeah.
Like it says in your title, you're a human expert, human connection and communication expert. I feel like today's society has disconnected us
Hmm.
from the one-on-one connection, and we rely so much on technology, and technology does not have feeling. It doesn't show compassion, empathy, and so forth. And I think that communication and conversations have become, less powerful, really.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Would you
And
say?
and yeah, and I love that you brought up tech because I think technology can be used as a tool to bring us together, just as it brought me and you together, that normally we would not have been, having this podcast if it weren't for the beauty of technology. But I think it also means when we are with each other, being 100% present and, conscious and aware and with each other in the conversation, fully immersed and engaged rather than being distracted by a million and 10 other things that technology can distract us with.
No, absolutely. And what's interesting that you say that, one of the things I started doing, and it's almost been a year,
Mm.
everybody lives by their phone, right? No matter where they are, their phone is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, when I call it a day, my phone stays in my office. It does not go to bed with me.
Good for you.
So, and it took me about a month.
Hmm.
And then one morning I woke up, I'm like, I forgot all about my phone. And I don't wake up, because most people wake up and the first thing they want to do is, what did I miss? What did I miss? What did I miss?
Yeah.
And you allow technology to take over your life. And I always ask kids, are you using your phone, or is your phone using you?
Good question. Very good question. I also like to put it aside and put it on silent. I've turned all my notifications off my phone, but I also silence it when I really want to get into workflow. And when I'm having, like, going out for dinner, for example, or with a group of friends, phones on silent, notifications are off, I'm with you. And if I know that I'm expecting something important to come in, I usually advise the person before, like, just so you know, I'm expecting a call, or I'll put an alarm on my phone so that I can be fully present with the person until the alarm goes off. And then I know I need to switch gears. So it's just little pieces that allow for us to actually connect deeper, because I'm showing you I'm here, I'm with you, I actually care about what you have to say, and that's why I'm being fully present.
Oh my gosh, Giovanni, you just touched on something that I think is so important. You're actually showing respect for other
Mm.
people in the
Hmm.
process. Respect and communication go hand in hand. What a novel concept.
Oh, right. Well, and I love it. I love how you say it. And it's funny, Antoine, because I just think for myself, like, how would I want to be treated? and would I want to be respected? And for me, care shows up as being fully present with me in the conversation. So if I'm sensing that you're distracted, your mind is somewhere else, you're looking down at your phone, I will actually stop speaking and I will wait until the person looks up at me again. And then I will ask them usually, are we okay to continue? But that
Ooh.
way I bring a mindfulness to I'm present of you not being present. So when you become present with me again, then we'll continue a conversation. And it can be done
That
very gently.
I love that approach. I mean, I don't think it's rude. What it is basically letting the other person know you're being rude, and be I'm gonna just sit back here and wait till I have your undivided attention,
Yeah.
which I should have had from the beginning. But these are things that have to be practiced. True.
For sure.
Yeah.
110%.
Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is you have a 9 key system.
hmm
Now, I have a keychain. I have keys on. I have no more than 4 on mine. So I have no idea. My 4 key system works for me, gets me in the house, gets me in the car, and all that good stuff gets me in the garage. But what is your 9 key system?
Yeah, great question. So this is what I call the connection code. And I've probably spent the last few years just digging deep and yeah, exactly this and doing, deep immersive research into it. And a lot of it came to me as well channeling meditations, but what it really is the 9 key system to building deep and meaningful connections with people. And this really embodies effective communication skills, emotional intelligence, leadership, and interpersonal relationship skills. So it's really about first, getting clear on what's going on internally within us. Who are we being? How are we showing up? How are we communicating? And then how is that showing up in our relationships from, business with our clients, our employees, our business partner, our teams, all the way to our relationships with family, our friendships, romantic partners, and even complete strangers that now become friends like you and I did. So
Right.
yeah, without giving the whole thing away, because we'd be here for like days if we talked about all of these 9 keys. But I would be happy to share, the first 3 keys with everybody if they wanted to hear them.
No, please do. No, absolutely.
Yeah. So I always like to start off with the first key that I call curiosity. And curiosity, I believe, is so important in terms of first asking ourselves questions and understanding who we are and what's important for us and what we value and what are our boundaries. And if we don't ask ourselves these questions, we don't understand what is important for us and what our needs are. And if we don't understand ourselves, we certainly can't communicate that clearly in the relationships that we are in. But the extension of curiosity, and the part that I find the most fascinating, is getting curious about other people. And I think one of the deepest ways to connect with someone is in showing that you care. And showing that you care is by asking them about who they are. What made them who they are today? What led them down the path that they've taken? What is their story? Everybody has a story. And beyond that, I think everybody in this world has something that they can teach us, that we can take away and learn from an element of their life, some sort of lesson. And so I think when we really start asking these questions and peeling back that onion, we can really learn a lot from other people. And I think that's really the way to connect on a much deeper level as well, just simply through asking questions and actively listening to people when they actually share these insights with us.
I actually just ran into a gentleman last week, and I hadn't seen him in 6 years.
Mm.
We run into each other at the UPS store, dropping off a package. And so he looks at me and he goes, "Hey," he's like, I know you, I know you. I goes, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, Antoine." He goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah." So we start, having our general conversation back and forth. And I say, "By the way, how's your daughter?" And
Mm.
he's like, his reaction was, "You remembered my daughter?" I'm like, "Yeah, I only met her twice." But
hmm
he talked so much about her in our previous conversations before meeting her. I
Yeah.
remembered that, and I knew that was engaged. And I asked, I said, "Is she's married now, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, she sure is." But I share that just based on what you shared, how important it is, but also how much people appreciate the fact
Oh
that you
yeah.
listen and that you ask questions.
110%. And I love that you shared that, Antoine, because I always say it's not necessarily the big grand things that we're doing that make all the difference in our relationships. I think it's those small incremental details that actually make the big difference. And that those small details, the little things that you're listening to, that you actually bring back to a conversation 6 years later, that's what shows someone, oh, you actually cared enough to listen, to remember, to ask about it, to
Right.
genuinely inquire because you actually want to know. Like that goes a very, very long way. And I think that's what really builds back to respect and deeper connection.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. And again, like I was saying earlier, I think it's one of the elements that's missing in our everyday lives. And because everybody is so caught up in me getting to where I want to go and not realizing that you also can help other people get to where they go by being genuine and authentic with them in your everyday communication, as opposed to, well, it's even like general salutations. I don't know
Mm.
about you, but I read off and I feel that when people speak to me. And here in North Carolina, there's a, I guess you could say there's a general response that people give. It's meant to be genuine, but it's not because it's used so often. And for instance, it goes like this: they say, "Well, how are you?" So I'm fine. Hope you are. And they say, "Hope
Oh,
you are." It's supposed to be a genuine thing that's carried over for generations, but in
yeah.
today's society, it doesn't have as much
Wait.
meaning. It
Yeah.
doesn't have the weight. It's just words because it's become habit. It's become habit. And I think we are creatures of habit and not realizing, kind of to your point, about being, when you're being genuine with people and you genuinely ask questions, they know if they're genuine questions
Yes.
or if they're just general questions just to have conversation.
Yeah, you can feel it. You can definitely
Right.
feel it. I love that you said that. Going even deeper into that, I know you said, people can be busy and they're kind of running around and thinking about their own lives. But actually, what I found was really interesting in the research that I did on curiosity, brilliant professor by the name of Todd Kashdan that speaks a lot about this. He actually showed on a graph the digression of curiosity from childhood to adults. And so what he illustrated was that as kids, our level of curiosity is right up here and we're super excited and we're super engaged and we want to know everything and everything's shiny and new. But then it progressively drops as we become teenagers. And that's mostly because teens are afraid of criticism and judgment and they don't want to look stupid and foolish in front of their peers. But then as adults, not only does it go down, it actually concaves. In other words, adults are literally numbing themselves to asking questions. One, because I think adults often assume that they either know everything already or that they should already know everything. And that's why they won't ask. And so there is often a fear piece or a hesitancy piece around asking because of all this internal dialogue that's going on in the adult. Like, maybe I should already know that. Maybe I would look stupid if I asked that, whatever else it may be. Or they've just been trained out of asking and they don't even think to do it. And so I think oftentimes, while we could say, okay, we're busy and running around and a million other things on our mind, I also think there is that fear piece, that naturally being blocked, and also just not building the habit of being curious.
Oh, you know what's so interesting about that? And just so people know, we didn't plan this ahead of time, but you're just kind of laying down examples for me to kind of really support what you're talking about. Last week, I had a gentleman on who happens to be an expert in public speaking.
Mm,
And we were talking about different exercises to work on, improving your public speaking. Well, me, I'm like, I want to become a better public speaker because I want to, get in front of people and share my message and all that good stuff like that. And I told him, I said, listen, I don't have guests on just to have them on. I'm here to learn as well.
hmm
So he talked about a couple examples. I said, well, let's try one. Totally caught him off guard. He's like, you're willing to try an exercise without practicing, whatever. I'm like, yeah, people have to see that the learning process is ongoing, and you
hmm
have to be willing to accept and realize that you don't know everything and
Yes.
that you want to continue to learn. So he put me to an exercise, and the exercise was he gave me a word, and I have to give a short speech on that word without researching or learning about it beforehand. It was a
Okay.
great on the spot kind of thing. And he goes, Coach, man, you're willing to do it? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So I think being understanding and realizing that you don't know everything and be willing to learn from others. As I always say, don't be the smartest person in the room because you won't learn anything.
That's just it. And it's interesting the example you just gave, Antoine. I wasn't going to dive into this key, but it really reminds me of another key I touch on that I call being fully flexible. And I think when we can walk into any environment with any type of human being and not only adapt, but be open-hearted and open-minded to what can show up, who can show up, the conversations that can show up, including, people saying, don't talk politics, don't talk sex, don't talk religion, don't talk all these things that are uncomfortable. And I say, why not talk about them? But let's talk about them from a fully flexible space, from an open-minded space that says, I'm willing and open to hear you, even though I may not agree with you. And I think those are the kind of conversations we need to be having more than ever today, especially in politics.
Oh, whew, you open a can of worms there because if you really think about it, the examples you just gave, these are the reasons we don't have genuine conversations because
Yeah.
everyone is afraid and everyone's so opinionated on certain topics that it's set in stone. Hey, this is what I believe. I don't want to hear anything else. I'm not
hmm
willing to be open-minded to grow and learn,
Yeah.
because everybody has different opinions and different perspectives. I'm open to learn what your position is or opinion on something is. I might actually learn something from it.
hmm
And you've seen there's been a couple of documentaries on individuals that were in the white supremacy groups, and
Mm.
they no longer are because their
Yes.
eyes were open due to conversations and them being flexible and willing to experience and learn the other side and realizing, oh my gosh, I've been brainwashed into believing this
Yeah.
without getting the facts.
Yeah. And call me an idealistic, person, or maybe romanticizing things or whatnot. But I really do believe that if humans were to take a moment to tap in and really listen to themselves, we can feel what feels right and what feels wrong. And I don't like to make things right or wrong, but I'm talking more on a very innate, sort of intuitive level of, I think all humans at the end of the day really just want to connect with each other. And I think we've been socialized and conditioned into separating ourselves for one reason or another. But I think when we can tune into that, our natural innate self again, I think we recognize that beliefs such as being a part of, the KKK or white supremacy are so unaligned with what it means to be genuinely human.
Right. No, no.
And
Phew.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. But that's a great lead in to talk about conflicts and how we deal with conflicts. And a big part of conflicts is, in my opinion, is being flexible, open-minded.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always two sides to every story, and it also encompasses asking questions and
Oh yeah.
listening to the answers, not just asking questions to ask them so you can walk away and go, well, I asked you about that. I asked a question, but did I hear the question?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting that you bring up conflict because this actually pertains, I mean, all my keys in one way or another do address conflict or conflict management. But the second and third, which are what I call consciousness and clarity, really are about getting aware of who you are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and where you're at in that moment energetically, and how that's showing up in your relationships with people, in the conversations and dialogue you're having with those people. And the clarity piece is really about getting clear and aligned with, what are your values, what is important to you. And when you're clear on that, then you can express them calmly with other people. So rather than fighting against something that you may not even be clear of what it is, or rather than fighting from a place of, this extreme tension, rather than saying, let me step back, let me be aware of how I'm showing up in this space. Who am I being? And is that the best type of person I could be to overcome these types of conflicts? And so when we get aware of self and how we're showing up, and then get clear on what's important for us and what it is that we actually want the solution to be, right? What would be the ideal outcome of this, rather than just going in guns a-blazing and ready to fight, right? Then with that awareness and that clarity, then that shows up in our communication, and that's how we can resolve a lot of the conflicts.
I like that. And I actually going to go back to something you mentioned early on, because I think it ties in perfectly here. And it's a big part of the work that I do with working with teenagers and their conflicts with parents and things of that
Yeah.
nature. So you're talking about the curiosity, the heightened curiosity as younger kids are, and as the older they get, that curiosity drops. And in the conversations I've had with kids, the biggest thing is they're not listened to. So going to your point, they're afraid to ask questions because they, kind of like we were saying about with adults, sometimes they feel like they should know and they shouldn't ask. And I always tell them the only dumb question is the one you don't ask. But a big part of the conflicts they say they have is the responses they get when they do ask. So parents don't leave the door open for conversation. So when you hear because I said so and no, guess what? You grow up hearing no because I said so, and you never challenge it or you never ask questions about it. And my advice to them is always ask questions. You may not get the answer that you want, but the fact that you're letting your parents know, hey, I truly understand what you said, but I also want to understand why, so I can learn from why you don't want me to do something, or just a flat out no. Because guess what? I may be in a situation later, I can make my own decision.
Yes. Love that you said that. And I would like to also throw it on the parent and say, create an open space for your children. Because if your kids are asking why, they may really just want to understand what is the rationale behind your decision making. It may not necessarily be just to challenge you. And I think this often happens with parents, that parents assume like our children are challenging us, so we just have to shut it down, as opposed to saying, let's explore this a little bit deeper and let me really give you the reasoning behind it. I know I was definitely that teenager. I would say to my mother, why? And she'd say, because I said so. And I would say, no, really, but why?
Right.
I'd be like, just tell me why. Because when I understand why, then I can at least, emotionally connect with you and get where you're coming from. If I don't get where you're coming from, it's hard for me to actually want to listen and follow. So.
Yeah, you sound like my older brother. That's him. He was always questioned. He questioned everything. And guess what? It turned out to be the best thing for him because of who he is and the person that he is. It's never changed him, but he learned to gather information by asking questions.
100%.
And he's an educator too. So he turned around and give it right back, right? So
that's it.
Yeah, so I think that's so important, and that's a great point, and it is a give and take, and I think parents have to understand that we know that you're protectors of your kids. You want nothing but the best for them, but you also have to realize that they're going to ultimately be adults one day, and do you want them truly prepared to make decisions, life-changing decisions for themselves? Because you're not always going to be there for them to call and go, hey, mom, dad, hey, this is a situation that I'm in. What should I do? And I've shared before that parents don't realize too that their kids share more with other authority figures than they know. And sometimes they do that because of not having those open relationships and then allowing those kids to ask those questions. And the parents that do have a great relationship with their kids.
110%. I think if anything, I would encourage your kids to be asking why as much as possible, asking all the questions, what, why, when, how. I would fully encourage that. And even more than that, I don't think as a parent you need to or are expected to know everything. I think the moment we feel as parents that we need to know everything, then, ego can often get in the way. And I think that shuts us down from connecting with our kid, rather than maybe saying, let's explore this together. or, let's learn about this together, or I may not fully know the answer to this, but, let's figure it out together. And I think that also creates opportunity for connection with your kid, and showing them, like, I'm with you on this ride to learning in this life, rather than, I'm the authority figure that needs to know everything, and if I don't, I'm going to shut you down until you know.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about a situation that happened about 4 years ago. I was giving a basketball lesson to this young lady. She was a sophomore in high school. And for some reason in between, we started talking about school, classes, and we got on math. And I'm terrible at math. I hated
Mm.
math.
Hmm.
But we started talking about money and counting money. She goes, "Oh, I don't know how to count money." I'm like, "What?" This is the one thing I remember about money, and I remember how I learned it. I was working at McDonald's. My first
Mm.
job I ever had. I was a cook, and they started training me to work in the front. And I'm like, "Well, I'm not big on this money thing." And the girl that was training me goes, "I'll show you." She showed me like in 2 minutes. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that makes sense." So we stopped this basketball lesson, and I go to the whiteboard and I start teaching this girl how to count money. And then she got it. She goes, "Oh my gosh, this is great." But I shared that with you because of a couple things. One, here she's in high school, and she doesn't know how to count money. Part of
Mm.
it because technology gives you all the answers, so you don't. The critical thinking goes out the window.
Yeah.
That's one reason. The second is the curriculums have changed so much that the basics aren't being taught. They're
Mm.
bypassing the basics and going to the more advanced stuff because they feel like that's what they're going to need. And this is why, and I bring this all back to communication. Communication is the heart's and the foundation of how we grow relationships,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
that communication, that whole experience strengthened our relationship from a mentor coach situation because she's like, "Oh my gosh, I could talk to coach about anything, not just about basketball." So she
Mhm.
started coming in, asking more, start telling me more about school and
Mm.
telling me, different things. But I just wanted to kind of share that example to show that it is truly important that we communicate on so many different levels.
Yes, and what I love even more about that example is that it didn't sound to me that in any moment when she approached you, you had judgment on the table. And I
No,
think
never.
that is so critical, especially for a teenager, that teens are still so sensitive and they're still building that security within themselves. And so, they're even that much more sensitive, I think, to judgment coming their way. And so, it would be very easy for a teen to just assume that they're maybe slow or less, or they're not as smart as anyone else because they don't know how to count money. But the very fact that you could have a dialogue with her and say, "Hey, let me show you something easy and fun and simple," and you'll pick it up right away, that already, one, allows her to feel comfortable, like you said, to keep coming to you, and two, be able to learn and keep wanting to learn and not feeling judged for asking questions on her path of learning.
At
Yeah.
100%, 100% right. And going back to another previous guest I had on just recently, Howard Berg, who's actually holds the record, Guinness World Book of Records for the fastest reader. Well,
Mm.
he teaches kids how to learn. And I bring this up because of what you just said too. He was a teacher in New York for years, and he stopped teaching because he was chastised for teaching kids how to learn. Principal pulled him aside and asked him what he was doing. He goes, "Well, I'm teaching kids how to learn." He goes, "That's not what you're here for. You're here to teach the curriculum and then kind of go there." He said, "That was my last day of teaching." What he does now is he teaches 8, 9, 10, 11, and 90 plus year old people, not just how to read quick, how to learn. And he's taught kids that went from middle school, and one is a Ivy League professor at 22
Mm.
years old.
Oh,
22 years
wow.
old.
Wow.
Yes. So I
Okay.
share that with you. You kind of go back to what I was saying about what schools, how they're how they're set up. They're
Mhm.
truly not set up to make kids be successful. They just kind of go through a process. And I think that also ties into why kids are so open to ask questions because they're not in an environment that allows them to do that. Here's your lesson. Here's your homework. Get it done. Turn it into me. Here's your next lesson. Do that. Turn it into me. And they
Yeah.
become robots and they don't get to think for themselves.
And speaking very much to that, I think I really began learning the concept of critical thinking only when I went away to university. And that's when, we were encouraged, be critical thinkers, challenge everything. And this goes back to the curiosity piece. Ask questions about everything and anything, regardless of how foolish it may seem or of how much people may, offer backlash at you. It's worth asking these questions and being that critical thinker and going that much deeper. And it doesn't amaze me, someone at 22, what was the position they took on, Antoine?
He was a professor at Ivy League school. Yeah,
And
he graduated high school at 15. He graduated,
impressive.
had his master's at 18, PhD at 20,
Yeah,
and became a professor. Oh yeah.
yeah,
And again, another example, just
yeah.
on the podcast live, he improved my memory in 5 minutes. And I can't remember anything. He gave me 10 things to remember. And after he ran through the 10, I could remember 3. 5 minutes later, I could tell you all 10. And today I could still tell you all 10.
Mm,
That's how quickly we can
yeah.
learn.
Oh,
But it's
yeah.
all about how it's presented to you and what environment you're in.
100%. A lot of what you're speaking to reminds me of what I teach in the realm of leadership. And I think this applies to, parents are a form of leader just as much as even, a business owner leading their team. When business owners, when parents can step into that leadership role, I think what that really looks like is creating a safe space where people can ask questions, where they can openly communicate, where they can dialogue about what's going on, how they're feeling, what they do or don't know, and go those layers deeper. And I think that's how you create a powerful team, the same way that's how you create a powerful child. You develop a teen into an adult who really does think critically, who really does have that ability then to think for themselves in any arena, any environment, any relationship of their life. So, in simplistic terms, I think any strong leader really does know how to hold space. They know how to create the environment for people to be able to open up without judgment on the table and to be able to share. And I think that shows up in parenting just as much as it shows up in business, as much as it does in our romantic relationships.
And you just basically summed up being a part of something and knowing you're a part of something and knowing that you have a voice in being part of something keeps people engaged. If we're talking about kids, it will keep the kids involved, that they know that they have a say in the success and or failure of a project or whatever
Yes.
team they're a part of. And just like in the business world, if a CEO allows all of the subordinate employees to have a voice and to share their opinions, whether he uses them or not, just knowing that you have the freedom to voice your opinion or share something creates an environment that everybody wants to be a part of. And that's what we all want to do, is be a part of a community, a village, if you will, where you
Mhm.
know that your voice matters and that your opinion matters. But
Yeah.
we unfortunately we are getting further and further away from that with each passing day, in my opinion. And it's unfortunate, but I think if enough people come together like yourself and share your experience and your expertise, we can educate people or re-educate people in the importance of communication and connecting with people.
110%. Yeah. I couldn't agree more with you. And I think it's so important. And, it's interesting because as I have dug deeper into the research over the years, I always started asking from the moment I started traveling over 10 years ago, Antoine. I asked, what is it that fulfills human beings? Like, what is at the core of really making us genuinely satisfied, satiated, fulfilled with life? And what I intuitively knew and was calling connection, I ended up discovering I'm a bit of a neuroscience nerd. So in the neuroscience research, I ended up discovering later that humans need connection. We need quality relationships, which of course embody these effective communication, emotional intelligence, leadership skills. But we need human connection just as much as we need food and water. And
Yes.
that, yeah. And that
Yeah.
when we don't have it, our body physiologically responds to that same lack the way we would feel a lack of food and water. And it's fascinating because what the research came to show is that when humans are actually lacking these connections, these healthy relationships, we turn often to food to replace that because it offers the same neurochemical response, these happy hormones in the body that we're looking for. But vice versa, if we're in love, that sort of honeymoon stage, we either will forget to eat or food will taste that much richer. And so this really shows how wired we are to need these healthy, deep, meaningful relationships just as much as we do need food and water.
That is quite interesting.
It's
Well,
fascinating.
and the reason I say that is, we have always been or recently labeled as the country that has the most obese population. And,
What an
you know,
interesting connection.
right. So when she say that, I'm like, wow. And again, sometimes again, this is where you get an opportunity to learn and understand situations that is. So for our listeners, there are always opportunities to gain a little bit of something and utilize it in your life to transform.
Mm-hmm.
That last part you said, just like, oh my gosh. So it makes you start looking at people a little differently when you start, even if you have conversations with them, you start to delve into a little bit more, asking questions,
Mm-hmm.
and people start kind of sharing with you. What's interesting about that also, and I've shared this recently, but it ties so closely to what you just said. Had an experience several months ago with a young lady and her mother. Well, it turns out that the daughter was disrespecting the mom, and the mom was bringing the daughter in for a lesson. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. Your daughter's disrespecting you. You're going to reward her by bringing her in and allow me to give her a lesson. I said, that doesn't work well. That doesn't work good for me because I'm enabling her to continue that same behavior towards you.
Yeah.
So we kind of sit and had a conversation. Conversation kind of got very serious. And both of them had been very emotional, been crying and everything. And there was an underlying reason for all of it.
And what was that?
And it was that the single mom, the daughter wanted to see her father, but the mom couldn't afford to send the daughter to see her father. So the daughter was lashing out because she wasn't getting what she wanted. But the part that I wanted to share with you with this was both of the mom and daughter were overweight. And the mom
Mm.
admitted that part of that was because of the tension, and not being able to. And that's what her refuge was to feed. And the daughter kind of picked up on that as well.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that you also say this. So part of my background initially when I went to school was in journalism and communications, but I went back to school for holistic medicine. And the idea behind that is to actually look at anything going on in someone's life, any challenge or problem or block from a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual point of view. And so if one thing is off, it's because there's something else going on. And so if you were to look at the physical body and say, okay, you're overweight, then the next automatic step I would say is what's going on emotionally in your life? Because if something is off emotionally, so if the mother is single, she can't afford to take care of her daughter or send her daughter away, she probably feels guilt and shame around all of this, carrying that emotional energy every day, maybe repetitive thoughts of that, feeling so bad about it, and then of course stuffing it down with food. And so the moment we address what's really layers deep, which is the emotional aspect, then naturally the weight sheds. And pardon the metaphor or the
Mhm.
pun, but it really literally it is a weight that sheds off of our body, be it energetic or be it literally physical weight that comes off of us.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, you just
yeah.
described the exact situation. That's exactly what that was, and that's exactly what the mom said it was. And it's unfortunate, but it's so true that you have to connect with the source of it
Mm-hmm.
all.
And even analyzing food itself. So, part of when I went to school, we studied nutrition. And the fascinating thing about it is even within certain foods, for example, when you have a sweet tooth and you want to eat something really sweet, that is a direct indication that some sort of sweetness is missing in your life. So those are moments when I will tune in. So for example, if I'm having, a day where I'm like, I just really want sugar, I will first stop and I'll say, is this hormonal or is this emotional? And if it's emotional, is it because I didn't get my dose of connection that I normally would get or want in a day? And so tuning in and asking ourselves those questions. And this goes back to key number 2 that I talk about, which is consciousness. And when we're really conscious of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and energetically, then we can powerfully show up and then be able to, one, have a clear understanding of what's going on internally, but also, like I said, to then be able to communicate that clearly to our, in this case, our kids. And even this mom, in this case, she's non-verbally communicating with her daughter that food is the solution, and how problematic that is long term if the mom has kind of, gone off the radar in the sense of, she's checked out and she's not aware. Now she's putting practices in her life that are going to extend over to her daughter that may not necessarily be beneficial for her daughter. So of course, the more aware we are within ourselves, the more we can then beautifully impact other people as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And with this mom and the daughter, I mean, one of the first things that stuck with me after was, it's obvious that the daughter's personality, very introverted, very quiet. And you know why that is, because of the influences in high school. I mean, she's in high school, so you can imagine with all the body shaming that goes on in high school, and you can only imagine what that's doing to her confidence level. But great point. Again, I share these examples because they really tie into a lot of what you do, and I knew you'd have some feedback and some expertise to add to that. We could go for like ever on this, but I want to kind of ask you about what you're working on now. I know you have a couple of things that are in the pipeline that I'd love for you to share with us.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. So I'm currently in the process of actually building out a retreat. It's a 5-day retreat that I'm offering. I actually live here down in Mexico right now, like I said. So I'm going to be running this retreat here, Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and we really dig into these 9 keys of connection. And, it's just as much learning in theory as it is exercises and activities and bonding and connecting and networking with people. So really excited for this. Anybody that would like to know more, please feel free to reach out to me and I can send you the details. And I also do have my 3-month program that I call the Connection Code, where I walk people through, of course, these 9 keys. We work as a group as well, meeting up once a week. And then I love to also offer my one-on-ones with my clients. And this is kind of the extension of the program where we can do personal work together. And this is when I think the layers really come off and we can really go deeper as to, what's going on in your life in terms of your relationships, of course, be it romantically, be it with your kids, be it in business with your clients or your team. But also, and of course, family. We can't forget about family relationships. Those are always the key to everything too, right? But at the core to every solid, healthy relationship is the one we have with ourselves. And so what I like to do with my clients one-on-one is really unravel that, like I said, from a physical, mental, emotional, and energetic, spiritual background, where we really look into, okay, what is taking place and how is that impacting your relationships, but also how is that just impacting your overall well-being, your success, your fulfillment in this life. And I always like to say, Antoine, the quality of our lives is based on the quality of our relationships. And of course, that relationship starts with ourselves. So all this to say that I am offering a 5-day retreat. I do offer my 3-month program, which is including group coaching. And then, of course, I love to do one-on-one work with my clients as well. So anybody that would love to, get in touch, would love to know more about it, I'd be very happy to have even a beautiful video chat, and we can see how I can help.
Sounds great. And just so everyone knows, when they listen to this, all of your contact information will be in the show notes so they can reach out to you and
Amazing.
schedule a trip to Mexico.
Yeah.
Right? But one of the things that I loved about what you said, and it's so true, you can't love anybody until you love yourself. And you have to be, right?
Yeah. Yes. And, this concept of self-love for me, Antoine, has been one of the things that I've almost like pulled back and resisted on for the longest time. And I think it's because it's such a buzzword today. Like, what does that really mean? What does loving yourself really actually mean? And I remember seeing a girl sitting here on the street one day, funny enough, and she had this sign that said self-love on it. And do you want a hug? And I sat down with her and I said, I'm just curious, what does self-love mean to you? Because I've been rattling my brain about what this really means beyond it just being a buzzword in today's day and age. And she said, when there is a removal of judgment and shame towards self, this is when we can really love ourselves. And so, whether that's the definition across the board or not, it definitely resonated with me in the sense of being aware every day when I wake up, how much shame do I allow to come into my personal dialogue with myself? Because that shame certainly does not serve us in any area of our life and in any relationship that we engage in with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. And like I said, every word, every phrase has a different meaning to everybody, and
Yeah.
it's always how they look at each one of those. And it's all about transformations also. We talk
Mm.
about different phases of our lives, and to your point of pulling back layers, which is what you do really well. Once you start pulling back layers, you get to the heart of everything, and you make
Mm-hmm.
people self-aware
Yeah.
of different aspects of their lives and where they are. So I think that everybody, there's no right or wrong in certain instances. It's all about what you believe and what you understand things to mean. For instance, relationship has the word friend has a totally different meaning to me than it has to most people. Primarily
Mm.
to me, friends is a phrase that is just used in everyday language, and in reality, it has a more purposeful meaning to
Mm.
me. You know, for instance, circle of friends, I can count on one hand how many friends I have in this world, and that's the truth because I value the word that much. It's
Oh,
not just
wow.
knowing people. I'm acquainted with more people that I'm friends with, and I'm fine with that. And it will always be that way because I have uh, a high ceiling for the meaning
Yeah.
of friends. And those
Mm-hmm.
people go back 30, 40 years, and they will always be there. I know they will be. But
Mm-hmm.
since that, there haven't been people that have matched or equaled, come close to what those individuals have meant to me in my life because nobody spent enough time to know who you are. Nobody spends enough time to find out what a friend is. You find out who your friends are at your lowest times in your life. And
Mm.
you know, you have your fair weather friends, the people you haven't heard from. But as soon as you start doing something well, people come out, oh my gosh, I've been sitting. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. You're very cordial, but you're also aware. Where were
Mm-hmm.
you before? I've been doing stuff all along. You've been doing stuff all along. Other people have been doing stuff all along. Friendship has a strong meaning for me. And I just share that because
Yeah.
with your information about self-love, friend is another one. And that's a word that's just thrown around. Oh yeah, we're friends. I know you, but we're not friends.
Yeah. So I really like that you mentioned timeline, and people also associate connection, I think, the same way they associate friendship with a certain period of time. And I would arguably say it's not necessarily how long you've known someone for. I think it's the degree of depth you've gone. How many, once again, going back to these layers, how many layers have you pulled back and unraveled in that period of time? And I say this just from, having traveled for over a decade, predominantly on my own, and having met people sometimes, Antoine, that maybe I would have spent less than a week with them and genuinely felt like they really deeply knew me and understood me on a very soulful level, that I could rely on them, I could trust them, I could depend on them. And that while they may have not gone through different experiences with me, they certainly knew of my history and understood it. And I do think there are some relationships like this that almost feel like they're from another lifetime. And they're not, like you said, it's not necessarily about the quantity of how many people you're going to find like that.
It's
But
quality.
yeah, certainly. And
Yeah.
so I think you can have quality connections and quality friendships, and that not necessarily have to mean that it takes, a decade to get there. These things can happen much quicker, but I think once again, it comes down to being clear on what does friendship really mean to you, and what does connection really mean to you, and what are your values, and are they aligned with that person that's sharing space with you?
Perfect
Yeah.
example would be the Village of Inspiration, which you're a member of. That's
Yeah.
not a big list, right?
Mm.
There's a
Yeah.
reason, and it
Yeah.
goes to your
Yeah.
point. Don't know people over a long period of time, but there's something unique and special about each one of the individuals that makes them an inspiration, and it makes them a part of that Village of Inspiration. It's almost characteristics, special characteristics,
Yeah.
and there's certain things you just can't hide when
Yes.
you're talking about, when you're talking about an individual. Certain things you can't hide, and most people, and everybody's perceptive to a degree, but some people are more perceptive than others. A person like yourself who studies people as much as you do, you're going to be more perceptive than the average person. True.
Yes. I don't want to say to a fault. It's never to a fault. It's a beautiful gift, but yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So, but I think that's an example where what you're talking about too is how you define the word friend, but also I never said that the Village of Inspiration were friends. They were people of inspiration who bring value to me, and in turn, I hope that everyone else does the same thing, brings value to who they are as a person, but also helps us bring out more of who we are, because
Yeah.
we're inspiring one another, and that's the whole purpose.
Yeah. And I think for me, going full circle on this whole interview, it comes back to this piece of respect, like you mentioned in the very beginning. It sounds like the people you've placed on this list are people you deeply respect and admire. And that's why, you've put them in the positioning that you have. The same goes for your friends. It's a different level or layer, but an admiration or respect that you also have for them for different reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I appreciate you adding that little tidbit. So one last question for you. And that is, would you share with us the individual or individuals that have been most influential in your life and why?
Oh, yeah. I'm like, Brene Brown and Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you guys are listening to this, feel free to reach out to me. Usually it's like family, friends, but I would say Brene Brown, for anyone that is not familiar with her work, her book specifically called Daring Greatly and her TED Talk on the power of vulnerability entirely changed my life, just in terms of how to see ourselves and how to see other people. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, his brilliant work in terms of intermingling spirituality with science has really influenced my own work, because I very much feel the same way, that I do like to cross the two worlds. I like to understand this physical world we live in just as much as I like to work with the energetic world, and mix in quantum to all of that. But more than anything, Joe's meditations during the peak of COVID had me meditating for 3 hours a day, which is what actually led me to downloading all of this information. It came naturally through me. Just years and years of all this information coming through me in my meditations, and that's how I ended up creating the 9-key system, the connection code.
And I ask that just because everybody has different people that inspire them and have put them in positions. And some people say family, some people say mentors, and other individuals whose work have inspired their work and allowed them to continue to do theirs. So I really appreciate it. Well, Giovanna, this has been an absolutely wonderful conversation, because that's what I like to call it. Truly unscripted, just a matter of picking your brain on different topics. And I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to share some of the examples. And I think that really truly align with the work that you do, and really appreciate it.
And I really appreciate you reaching out to me and connecting with me and holding the space for me to share this with everyone. So thank you, Antoine.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And we will continue to stay in touch, because remember, you're a member of the Village of Inspiration. Once a member, always a member.
I got the keys.
Yeah. I didn't give you a key. I just let you in the room.
Good point. Like, you're like, don't rub it in too much.
Hey, don't add that 10th key. I'm just messing with you. I'm just messing with you. Well, Giovanna, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Antoine. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. As always, I'm Coach T. I'm here to educate, support, and inspire the next generation of leaders. Till next episode, take care.
If you want your children to be successful in their academics and careers, or if you just want them more confident and build high self-esteem, the CF Success Academy is the place to be. This blueprint for the successful adolescent helps kids develop essential life skills they need to be successful in both their personal lives and professionally. Visit CoachTsCorner.com to get started.